All right, let's get into it. So we are about 10 days away from UCLA, and it sounds like Utah's made some good progress during fall camp, and we had the opportunity to meet with Jason Beck and Morgan Scalley today at Media Availability, and I thought these two, I thought Morgan and Jason shared a lot of good details, a lot of stuff, a lot of positive stuff today, which was encouraging to hear. Some details and some individual updates on certain players and that sort of stuff. So that was really good to hear from them. I think in general, following or being up there the last couple of weeks and talking with players, talking with coaches, you kind of get to that point where it's just time to hit somebody else. I think we're at that point, and everybody said as much as they could say, and made as much progress as essentially they can, and guys are going to get better over the course of the season. But I think we're just to that point where everybody's kind of ready to take on somebody else, to hit somebody else. So that's sort of been the vibe this week, and I think we're all to that, right? I think we're all ready to watch some football and watch this Utah team go down to Pasadena and take on the Bruins. So really excited for this group, everything that everything that we've learned from media availability. Genuinely sounds like they have made progress, especially in some key areas. And I think if you listen to the podcast on Monday, I went through sort of my depth chart predictions, and we learned. Wait, yesterday was Monday. Yeah, right. Yeah, yesterday was Monday. So yesterday published an episode predicting the depth chart, and obviously we're not going to be getting a depth chart. But if you didn't listen to that episode or watched it on YouTube, I went through and sort of predicted, kind of gave my best guess at what the depth chart would look like. And so if you guys want, we can run through that now. But I think, everything that we heard from Coach Beck and Coach Scalley, I think solidifies sort of my feelings with the depth chart and where guys are at. I think wide receiver is still kind of up in the air in terms of who's where and playing what position, and who's the starter, who's the backup, that sort of stuff. There's still a little bit of some clarity needed on that front. But overall, I feel like this is I feel like the depth chart I put out yesterday is a decent representation maybe of what it actually is, or could be, I guess. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I think, Utah's gotten good development out of, a number of position groups throughout fall camp. And I think, a couple spots in particular that I think are going to be really important for Utah. And we all know this, right? Defensive tackle is going to be a big one with everything that, Utah lost from last year's roster. I think Luther Ellis is a coach that this staff really believes in. And, in talking to people over the summer, even people outside of the program have a lot of confidence in Luther Ellis and believe in his ability to develop players and get them going. So that's going to be a group that I'm really excited to see in terms of their progress over the course of the season, what we see from them. Again, Carson Kafusi, a guy that I've been high on, and Pupu Sepulona sound like they're going to be the guys, as the two freshmen to see early playing time this season. Morgan Scalley made the point that all five of those defensive tackles are probably going to see time. So we'll see with that group. And then another group that I think is going to surprise people, tight end. It's a group that I've talked about with Dallin Bentley and Hunter Andrews kind of leading the way there. I think J.J. Buchanan and Otto Tia really round out the depth and versatility of that room. I think that group's going to be a really pleasant surprise for Utah this season. So, it's going to be interesting to see it all take the field and what it actually looks like. every time we talk to the defense, they rave about, this offense and how different it is, how unique it is. So, we've watched a lot of football at Utah, elsewhere, seen a lot of schemes. I'm really, really interested, really curious to see what this Beck offense is going to look like with sort of the versatile athletes that they have, at these positions and how he utilizes them. So should be much different than the Andy Ludwig offense, and should utilize a number of different players in a number of different ways, which I think is going to get everybody pretty excited about that. So again, just a reminder, if you guys just hopping in, whatever, please feel free to use the chat, the comments. If you have questions, if you have comments, please feel free to throw those in there, and I'll make sure to get them. So I'm going to be marking some as we go along, and we'll get to it. But first, before we kind of get into the back and forth, the Q&A type stuff, want to play the video from Morgan Scalley and Jason Beck today, just to kind of set the table with what we're going to talk about tonight. So let me pull up Morgan Scalley.
Solid camp. Excited to be hitting some other jerseys. Good physical camp. Still working out some kinks with depth positions, but very happy with the leadership. Very happy with the progress that our guys have made, and we pretty much know who we are right now.
What's that defensive tackle room look like for you right
now? Man, we've made a ton of progress. The freshmen came in and really have proven that they can play year one. So, Carson Kafusi and I would say Pupu Sepulona, listen, Semi and Sione, my guess is all of them see time at some point this season, but I would say that Carson and Pupu have kind of separated themselves from the pack, from the freshman pack. Add to that Leaky, and you got Dallas, and you got, who am I missing? Jonah. So that's a solid group right now. Very happy. Luther Ellis has done a heck of a job with that crew. We should be solid.
Kyle said a few weeks ago that Blake Cotton had finally separated himself on that outside corner spot. What have you seen from him, from the time fall started until now that led to that separation?
I would just say mastery of the scheme and physicality. He's got the speed to play corner, but to be able to add the physical element, the ability to blitz and leverage the football is a big factor in it. So that's another position group that you're going to probably see quite a bit of rotation there, because we feel comfortable with the progress that's been made there. Sharif Shah is a heck of a coach and has gotten those guys to progress quite a bit. Add to that, the progress of Jackson Benny, the ability that Rabbit Evans has to play the nickel. We have some versatility in the safety room. So very excited about the secondary.
What have you seen from Lavani Damuni this fall camp as he comes back from his injury?
He's just trying to get more confident in that Achilles, just more confident. And we've done a pretty good job of kind of limiting the reps. He knows the scheme, and it's just about getting to the party healthy. And so the physicality is never an issue with him. He's not a guy that has to be in there and learn how to hit. He knows how to do that. So, but he's feeling much better, and he's getting increased reps.
What does his follow-up, what does his presence mean to the younger guys and everybody else in that room?
Well, you need leadership. You need those guys that are compelling, that will meet extra with the young guys and be able to teach in a way that as coaches we're sitting there saying, yeah, we don't worry about him screwing the deal up, teaching something that we're not teaching. So leadership, you can never outperform the leadership that's provided, particularly from the players. So
how does having Smith and Lander taking some offensive snaps affect the?
I'm so mad, so mad. No, it's just like Sione Baki last year. You deal with it, and it's a good thing. As much as I'll give them crap when I'm, when they're on the offensive side of the ball, and I'll talk crap to them, I also let them know how proud I am of them. And listen, if you can add, wherever you can add value, you can help the team win, more power to you.
Do you expect to have Lander be the green dot this year, or kind of how does that role work for you guys this year?
We'll have multiple green dots, and the biggest thing there is in your substitution packages, just understanding that you got to have one in there at all times. So the good thing is the linebacker position, we have enough depth that the rotation, you're always going to have a guy in there that you trust. So whether it's Trey, whether it's Lander, whether it's Levani, all three of them are great communicators.
What's the most improved position group to the start of fall?
Most improved position group, defensive tackle. Yeah. Came into fall camp. That was a big priority, getting that, that position figured out, and I'm much more confident.
What does the rotation look like at defensive end?
Defense, a lot. So all of them are getting reps. All of them are playing well. It's 5 guys right now, 5 guys that are rotating, and like I said, it allows us, in past situations to get a little bit creative, but very pleased. I do nothing, I got great position coaches. I'm just like, you guys are awesome. Lewis Powell's fantastic with those guys and recruited the majority of them. So I just get to call blitzes and have fun.
I can't see. What was one of your biggest takeaways from last season that you wanted to address going into this season that maybe you guys adjusted and fixed in fall camp?
Run defense, tackling, and taking the football away. Those are all 3 that I feel we've done a good job of focusing on and having as a priority, whether we're practicing every day. We've had live sessions almost every time we've been in full pads, and you can't be scared of it. That's football, and we're at a position now. We always said we'll just keep tackling until we feel comfortable with the group, and we're at a point now where we feel comfortable.
And then specifically, what does Teo Johnson add on your defensive side there?
He can play corner, he can play nickel, he can play the free, and now he can play the strong safety. He's much more physical in the box, so versatility would be the biggest thing that he brings to the table.
Thanks,
All right,
Morgan.
Thanks, appreciate it. Thanks.
So there you have it. There's Morgan. Loved hearing from him. Obviously, good to hear on the defensive tackle front with those young bucks stepping up, Carson Kafusi, Pupu, and getting good development out of Dallas Vakalahi. We had the opportunity to talk with Dallas today, and he loved the way that Dallas talks about the game. Love the way he talks about this group, and he had a lot of really good things to say about Pupu specifically. Calling what stands out about him is his tenacious persistence, and that's something you love to hear with the defensive lineman. It's just being persistent, being tenacious. Those are always the types of words you love to hear about your defensive lineman. So, Pupu's kind of an interesting character where he came from Hawaii, the St. Louis program there in Honolulu, and won multiple state championships across 3 different sports: football, basketball, and volleyball. He's a guy that, when he committed, it was a big win for Utah. I know that there were a lot of people fired up about him because of that athleticism that he possesses. And now focusing that all in on football. Like that's what gets this staff really excited when you talk about Pupu, is just that raw athleticism, learning the game. He's still kind of new to the game of football, so he's got a lot of technical and nuanced development to go through, which is really exciting. But he's a kid that's 6'2", 280 pounds, good athlete. He's going to be that type that shoots gap, uses his quickness to get into the backfield and disrupt things. I think there should be a lot of excitement about Pupu and what he is going to mean to this defensive tackle room. Not just this season. Like I think he's gonna help this season, but man, his future is really bright in that Utah defensive tackle room. So be really excited about that. Obviously Carson as well, and the rest of that group. Dylan Battle, a big body. Semi Taulunga, another guy. If you watched his film come out of high school, you're excited about that. And again, like I said earlier, I think Luther Ellis is underrated as a coach in terms of what he means to the development of these players. I think he's going to do wonders with that group specifically over the course of the next couple years. But I'm really interested to see what sort of instant impact Coach Ellis has with their development this season. So should be interesting. And love the chat coming up. I've got I see the questions coming in. We'll make sure to get to those and have a good conversation tonight. So man, we're like I said, getting closer and closer to UCLA game, and excited about that. I think this team is really set up to sustain, get back to having fun. Like, I think that's kind of the biggest thing this year. Is this is a group that I think is going to have fun, is going to provide fun for us watching it, and I think that's going to be important for Utah moving forward and competing this year. So really excited about that. All right, let me pull up another video here. We'll listen to Jason Beck, and then we'll dive into your guys' comments and questions and all of that. So let me get Beck pulled up here, and we'll have at it. I got to go through the ads here. Like I said, make sure to utilize the chat. If you guys have questions, please feel free to post them there, and we'll get to them once we're done through with Jason Beck here.
Fall camp is gone for your offense.
Yeah, that's been what we're looking at every day. Who's consistently day in, day out making those plays. And some guys have been emerging that way and doing a nice job. Some guys are close, and we're just trying to keep forcing that issue of what we're asking them to do so that we can count on them in critical situations. So the nice job is, up front, they're setting the tone every day with that consistent work, and for everybody else to follow along with that.
What progress have you seen out of Tobias Merriweather and Larry Simmons?
They were so new when they got here. It was just getting everything going. But they both have played and done stuff in the past where they're comfortable stepping in and playing, right off the bat. So they've done a good job just trying to get them up to speed as fast as possible. They're both doing a nice job coming along and will help us this year.
How have you seen this tight end room maybe evolve as fall camp has started?
Yeah, it's been one of our more consistent rooms with that mix of guys showing up every day, and that includes like JJ. He came in as a young kid, and he's done a really nice job as he's been in there and improving each week. So they've been a strength of the group in terms of their consistency and what they're getting done.
Obviously the starting five gets the headlines, but what sort of progress did you see from the second unit offensive line?
Well, yeah, the starting five, they've done a nice job, and they've kind of been in and out a little bit with some different things, which have given other guys opportunities to get reps. So right now you feel like we have three guys that could come in and play, and we won't have to drastically change too much. So they've done a nice job just kind of establishing themselves and what they can do. And then we're just looking for another guy or two to continue to make that next jump where we feel the same way about them.
Wick gave us an update on the backup quarterbacks, and he mentioned in that there might be some plays for Bird. Is that something you anticipate maybe every game we might see him in specialty situations, or how often might we see it?
Well, you never know, but no, if hopefully, we're healthy, we play well and all of that. But if something were to happen, Bird has done a nice job. He's come in here, he's made plays, and he's done a nice job. So if we needed to, he can fill in and help us play. So I kind of look at it like we have a 2A and a 2B versus a 2 and a 3. So Bird's kind of played himself where he's a 2B, and he can do things at a high level where if we needed to, we can call him and get that done.
What has given you confidence about Isaac that allowed you to name him as the QB2?
He's really coming from spring and just took a big step forward from where he finished the spring, and his just ability to manage everything because of the experiences he's gone through has just kind of put him a step ahead for handling the whole offense and being able to do everything we needed to. But at the same time, Bird does stuff a little more like Dev than Isaac does. So it kind of has that door open where Bird can step in and do some things.
Devin said yesterday that he's working on, not taking chances as much this season. Have you seen that, those smarter decisions this fall so far?
He has, through fall, we track everything every day with all that, and he's done a really nice job with that. And so we just want that to continue forward through the season.
Who stood out at wide receiver so far?
What's that?
Who stood out at wide receiver so far?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's where, the most consistent is RD. he kind of maybe had a leg up coming from New Mexico with being consistent and having chemistry with Dev. But then all the other guys have just been, the new guys, Larry and Tobias, Zip's been in that deal, Justin's been in there. So a lot of those guys have just been improving, getting better, and we're just focusing in as we're starting to set that game plan on what can they do to help us win.
You talked a lot about mending your offense towards the strength of your team. Now 4 weeks through fall camp, I guess just what do you feel like your best strengths on the offense are?
Well, it is, mending the offense to that, and specifically kind of each guy. So even in the pass game, what can guys do, putting them in those positions to be successful. But we're looking to be a real efficient offense. We'll lean on the guys up front and kind of count on them to lead the way. And then as those skill guys perform in games, then we'll see what direction that takes. I've been a part of this where you think you have a great idea and you hit week one, and then you really find out where exactly that is with the playmaking in the game.
All right, there you have it, Jason Beck. Some good things, some encouraging things from him as well, including some specific updates on the receivers. I think Tobias Merriweather, Larry Simmons are going to be guys that Utah lean on this season. I think they obviously were brought in to play a pretty big role for Utah in the passing game, and from all accounts, it sounds like those guys have done a good job in fall camp in terms of the work that they put in during the summer with Coach Dampier. Essentially, he is an extension of Coach Beck in a way. But I think the work that they did in the summer has really translated here in fall camp, and it's allowed them to continue to make plays, to get off on a good start, and then continue to build on that. It sounds like that's been the case. There's been ups and downs, but it sounds like they have been fairly consistent in terms of what they've done over the course of the last couple weeks. So I think, in terms of a group that's most improved, I think receiver is obviously there. I think that group is going to be, really interesting to see just how exactly they're utilized. And I think it helps that, you have a receiver like Ryan Davis, who came to Utah from New Mexico and has that experience with Dampier, has that chemistry. He's going to be a reliable source, a reliable presence for Utah in the passing game. And to have that, I think is going to be really helpful for Dampier as he continues to cement his chemistry with everybody else. So I think, there should be a lot of optimism about what Utah can do in the passing game. But, we know this offense and this group in particular with the offensive line, with the running backs, I think, that's going to be where Utah makes its hay this year, is on the ground. And, with Wayshawn and with Nakari, you've got two really good running backs. I'm really fascinated to see who that third running back is going to be. And, I'm really intrigued to see what sort of impact Dampier has, on the run game, being that threat, off the backside, and what that can do in the option game to preserve space, to preserve sort of the timing for the offensive line with their block sequencing and all that sort of stuff to, get those key double teams, getting to the second level, picking off the linebacker, picking off a defensive back. That's the sort of stuff that I think Dampier's presence, you can't see it on a stat sheet, but when you watch him, when you see what sort of impact and like gravity that he has on the field, it just opens up so much for the run game. I'm really excited to see what Wayshawn can do this year with Dampier in the backfield with him and with that offensive line in front of him. So, that's going to be the big key, and it's going to be the recipe for Utah this season, getting back to the Big 12 championship game. So I want to start getting to some questions here. Let's see. We'll start with St. GZU. It sounds like heavy dose of run for UCLA until we can figure out how the wide receivers play in real game time. I wouldn't say that. Obviously UCLA will probably prepare for a heavy dose of run They'll probably gear up to stop the run. Dampier's going to need to make some plays through the air to preserve that space, to get the run game going. So, I don't think you're going to necessarily slow play introducing the wide receivers to action. You're going to get them involved early and often. And look, like Utah's got a system that, by all accounts, is pretty easy to pick up. This is not the Andy Ludwig offense where you had to memorize, assignments and adjustments and side adjustments based on what sort of coverage you're seeing and what sort of coverage you're seeing post snap and adjusting off of that. Like, it's not that. Like, it's a very simple offense. It's simple for the wide receivers to learn and to pick up. And I think it's going to be key for Utah to get those receivers introduced to the action pretty quickly this season. So, and the nice thing is you've got a tight end room that is also pretty productive. Can also be pretty productive, I should say, with Dallin Bentley and Hunter Andrews, JJ Buchanan, Otto Tia. And so how they're utilized as well is going to be really fascinating. So, yeah, I think, look, you're going to have to establish the run, but you can't wait to introduce these receivers. You got to get them going because that the Bruins are going to gear up to take away the run. So again, like I said, I think Dampier's presence does a lot for Utah, and this offensive line will be key to getting all of it going. So, but good question. Appreciate the question. Let's keep it going. I got some others that I got to go back to. I want to make sure I mention this. Yeah. I think so. Man, I'm excited about this group, man. The future of this group is so bright. I gonna need some shades, We're all gonna need some shades. It's that bright. Super excited to see what Carson and what Poo-Poo, Semi, Dylan, the big kid, Dylan Battle, and Sione. Really excited for that group. So it should be fun. Shout out to Glass. Glass half you, baby. All right. Next question. Adam Howick. A good one. How challenging is it to cover Utah football under Coach Witt? Honestly, it's not that difficult. It's it's entertaining, I guess, in a way. It's frustrating at times, but every program has its frustrating moments. I reached out to a lot of media members and other outlets and in other markets, I should say, they're all enjoying practice observations and stuff. I know Arizona State, they allow media to watch for an hour. I know my guy, Jason Shear, down in Arizona, they get to film practice. I guess they can't write about it, but they can film it. So how that makes sense, I don't know. But yeah, there's a couple other Big 12 programs that are, media members getting to watch practice. I'm just jealous, man. Jealous. But this year, I get it. New offense. You don't want to give away the goods. And, knowing me, I'm such a football mind that I'd say something stupid and leak the goods, and I don't want to do that. So, it's fun. I think Witt has done, a good job. He's great to interact with. Witt's awesome. And we all know he's, where he's at in his career, he's earned a lot of cachet. And, obviously, there's a healthy relationship between us and Coach Whittingham and the Utah program, and we appreciate all that they do for us. It's definitely, I don't want to say a dream come true for me to be able to do this, but it's definitely, something I love. It's not something I thought I'd be doing growing up, but man, I enjoy it every day. I don't take it for granted. So it's a lot of fun. Next question. Dampier is saying sometimes he has 8 seconds in the pocket. More of a nod to how great the offensive line is, or is it a concern on the defensive line? Well, I think it's important to understand that, in practice, you're typically seeing ones versus twos terms in the sense that one off the first team offense versus second team defense. So, keep that in mind when you hear things like that. And also too, he's not going to say that he's been sacked. He has been sacked in camp. that has happened a few times, more than a few times from what I've learned. But, he's not going to say that. So no, it's a nod to the offensive line. It certainly suggests that this offensive line can play at a really high level. And when you have two offensive tackles like Fano and Lomu, with an experienced interior three like they have, you're going to see plays like that where you just have time. Maybe it's a bit of a concern that he held onto the ball for 8 seconds. We could talk about that. Were their guys open? How was the coverage? What was the coverage like? Do we want to start complimenting the defensive secondary for the coverage they had on that play as well? I think that's going to be something that we see a lot of. Not 8 seconds per se, but I remember, back in spring ball, I got to see two scrimmages during spring ball, and I'm just telling you, when Dampier gets to sit there in the pocket for an extended period of time, when you get to the third, fourth, fifth second in the pocket, you can literally kind of feel the stress that it puts on the defense. That clock's ticking, and you can feel it. And I don't know if it's just us sort of anticipating something happening, but like you can feel that stress that it puts on the defenses, like, because Dampier can use his legs. He was really effective doing it last year. He's going to be effective this year, and yet with this passing game, I think Dampier is really adept at utilizing that time in the pocket, at buying time when things break down, going back to his time at New Mexico, and him buying time created opportunities down the field. I posted some clips of Dampier over the weekend. There was a clip of him versus Auburn where it's if I remember right, it was a play action sprint out. He had to evade a linebacker coming down to get him and buy some time, and then he lobs one down the field to his tight end in the scramble drill, getting vertical. And that's the sort of stuff you're going to see with Dampier this season. And sometimes it's just going to be him standing in the pocket because the offensive line is providing time for him to sit back there. So should be interesting to see, what it actually is. Is it the defensive line? Is it the offensive line? Is it the secondary? Like, it's a lot of fun. So take it all into consideration. There's a lot that goes into each and every play, and obviously Dampier isn't going to say that. He isn't going to mention the times he's been pressured and sacked and that sort of stuff. So yeah. All right. This one, Tyrell, do we know if Wilson knows the entire playbook and has it all at his disposal? We do not know. That has not been made clear by Coach Whittingham or Coach Beck in their availabilities, so we cannot comment on what we know there. So, no. But as we heard, Coach Beck, in his availability today, said that, Isaac has made progress from spring ball. And, with him, it's interesting. He's got talent, man. Like, there's talent in that arm. Again, I've said this, in previous episodes, that with what he went through last year, it's all going to be about how he responds and how he moves forward, and I think that's going to be the key for him. And, coming to Utah and now having to learn a new offense, is he the best fit for it? Is he the most ideal for it? No, probably not, but there's still a lot of ability, a lot of talent to work with where Beck can utilize, that arm talent that he has. And for Isaac, really, it's simple things, for him that can really help transform his game, right? Little things like just taking the check down, taking the short stuff, taking the easy stuff, the stuff that the defense gives you. Isaac is he's a greedy quarterback. He wants to convert those big plays. He's looking for those big plays because, he believes in his arm and he has the talent to do it. Watched him do it a lot at Corner Canyon against some tough competition even. And, you like your quarterback to have that sort of confidence in himself. But for him, progress is simple. It's simple stuff. Getting the ball out in a timely manner will do a lot for him. So, we'll see with Isaac. With Bird, I'm excited for him. Coach Beck, like he said, he's a great fit in relation to how he compares to Devin Dampier. And when you get excited about Dampier, what he was able to do last year in Mexico, what he could potentially do this season. You like that sort of comparison. When you go back and watch Ficklin and his high school film, you like the athleticism is obvious. And again, I've said this a couple times over the last little while, but watching him throw the ball in spring, seeing it up close, man, it just comes off his hand at a different pace. Like there's just juice in that arm that is. I think he's got the best arm, on the squad. So for him, he's going through the process that every true freshman goes through. It's about acclimating to the speed of the game, and for him, that's getting his processing, getting his decision making up to a level that'll allow him to execute, if he's asked to step on the field. So for him, I think with Ficklin, I think we all need to, be patient. The future is super bright with him. I think there's a lot of confidence in what he could become. And, whenever I've talked to him, I think I've talked to him twice, going back to spring ball, he loves it here and he's fired up to put in the work and to be that next quarterback. So should be fun there. Let's see. I'm going to get into some other questions. We'll get back to Tyrell here because this is a fun one. Of the last 5 years, so that would be back to 2020, right? Where does this season rank in terms of excitement for you? Man, I'd put it third. 2020 was obviously a mess. 2021, there was excitement. 22 was the most exciting season because of what Utah was bringing back. Cam, Brant, Dalton, Tavion, Mackay, that group, man, that group was special. It's unfortunate that injuries, snuck up on that group specifically, with Brant and all that. But, man, that group was special. And coming off the first Pac-12 championship win, the excitement was at an all-time high. And so that's number one. 23 was interesting. Last year, I would say going into the season, there was a lot of excitement. It kind of mimicked that 2022 season. And, but this year, man, I'm pretty excited. I would put this second or third, over the last 5 years. I think I'm excited for this year specifically because of just the overall change in vibes with this group. There's, a refreshed appreciation, a refreshed energy and love and passion. When you've got guys like Cam and Brant that have accomplished great things, it becomes almost business-like, and that's not to say that's the wrong way at all. But, for us, it can be, it can be difficult to get excited for that. But with these guys, listening to Dampier talk and, him talk about building the chemistry with his teammates and listening to Spencer Fano just become more of his own person and coming out of his shell and allowing his personality to shine. Like, it's fun. It's enjoyable. And Logan Fano the same way, on the other side of the ball. I think Lander Barton has also sort of blossomed. He reminds me of Cody. Cody was a tough cookie, man. His sophomore, junior years, it was, whenever we interviewed him, it was always tough. And he did not have a great reputation among the media members because of how difficult he was in interviews. But his senior year, man, I don't know what happened, but he flipped the script on us and was just a joy to talk to. And I think, with Lander, same thing, man. He's embraced sort of the spotlight, embraced sort of, what this all means for him. And I think it's been a lot of fun to interact with him, going back to media days, going back to spring ball. It's been a lot of fun. So, I'm excited for this season for different reasons. Obviously, going into the season with sort of tempered expectations, cautious optimism compared to the 22, 20, and 23, whatever seasons, last season, 24, and that. But I think it's a different sort of excitement where it's more excitement for the individuals and the personalities on the team. And we'll see what that means in terms of the X's and O's and execution on the field this season. Let's get to another question here. And again, please feel free, use the comments, submit your questions. Would love to get through them. 45 minutes, still going strong, so please send those questions in. This one from Utah fan of mine. Do you think Lander and Snow will have an impact on offense this year? I do. I genuinely think they're going to make an impact. How big of an impact? I don't know. I think it's going to be pretty minor. But, Lander has that potential to be a Caleb loner, where he plays minimal snaps, but the snaps he does play are pretty impactful, right? I think he has that sort of potential. I'll never forget watching him his senior year at Brighton, watching him operate as a tight end. It was, man, I thought he was a collegiate tight end. And I have this photo of him just high pointing a pass over everybody. And I think he has genuine potential there. With Snowden, we'll see what that looks like. I think there's a lot of high expectations maybe for him, but I think I have higher expectations for Lander to make an impact than I do Snowden. So I think Snowden, I just don't want to take away Snowden from that secondary and from what he's going to mean to that defense. Being the type of cornerback that he can be this year, where he's that true CB1, where he can follow the opponent's best receiver. I want that to be his focus and be his biggest impact this year. But I think he still can make an impact on offense, just very minor. So if I had to rank it, I'd put Lander, ahead of Snowden, but I think both have the potential to make an impact this year. Shout out to Troy Taylor, man. Maybe not. Maybe not a shout out to Troy Taylor, but shout out to the iPhone offense. Yeah, it's all of the comments about the offense, from defensive players, offensive players have been really interesting. Talking to a guy like Tobias Merriweather a couple weeks ago, we asked him about the offense, and he said it's pretty unique. He's a guy that played at Notre Dame, pretty pro-style offense. Went at Cal, pretty spread offense. So coming here, you would expect to hear sort of similarities to that Cal offense that he just played in, but he said it's pretty unique. And so, again, just kind of interested, intrigued to see what it actually looks like. All right, glass half view. Is this the most important season ever for Utah? Ooh, man. Can we afford another dud? Or did we use our breakfast ball and mulligan? Whoo, wow. Going up on a Wednesday night or Tuesday night. My goodness, get your days right. Is this the most important season ever for Utah? Man, that's such a great question. I don't know that it's the most important, but I think you can make a case for it. I think it's in the conversation, right? With everything going on in college sports and, with the last two seasons being what they've been, you've got to right the ship. You've got to get back to, a positive record. You've got to be, plus in the win column. Whittingham, Scalley, those guys, they've got to get this ship righted. And so yeah, I think it's in the conversation for one of the most important seasons ever for Utah, because there's just so much at stake with what's going on in college sports, right? We know that football is the driver for everything, college athletics. And so, you're still kind of riding those Pac-12 championships. But if you go another year where it's kind of a bummer, that's not going to be, it's not going to be good. It's not going to help your case. And so, I think it's important for Utah to capitalize on this season. I still think there are expectations from people outside of this market of what Utah is. You hear it all the time with Joel Klatt, death, taxes, and Utah football. You don't want to let Joel down. Come on. You just don't want to let Joel Klatt down. The guy that's believed in you for a few years now, many years probably, but don't let Joel down. Um, we don't want to lose Joel. He's a good one, and so yeah, I think this is a very important season. I don't think you can afford to have another dud year this year. It's time to get back to your winning ways. Time to get back to Utah football as we knew it, running the ball, playing physical football. Being those bullies on the schoolyard, right? Being that type of, and we don't condone bullying. We don't, I hate bullies, but that's the sort of attitude you got to. That's the type of team you got to be physical. You got to be that type of team again this year. Oh man, Snoob, Shoob, Shoob. How's your day, Steve? Man, I'm telling you, like I said earlier, Mondays and Tuesdays, man, I'm going to be earning my paycheck these 2 days this season. It's going to be a doozy. So appreciate everybody for the support, for tuning in. As always, it's going to be a lot of fun this season for sure. Next question, Austin Johnson. Do you think Beck's offense has changed coming to Utah? I do. Yeah, I do. And I think the biggest reason why I believe that is the tight end position. So at New Mexico, it was a product of them simply not having tight ends to utilize, right? So he had to go more spread. He had to go multi running backs. And with this group, I think we're going to still see, a pretty good dosage of tight end usage. Now it's going to be different. It's not going to be the Andy Ludwig 12 and 13 personnel. It's still going to be spread, but you've got these bigger tight ends, not bigger tight ends, but bigger athletes that are tight ends that you can spread out, split them out wide, and you can utilize them that way. So, we've seen them move Otto Tia to that room. We've also seen them move JJ Buchanan. Sorry, I just got an update on Miles from my life. Freaking Miles. Where was I? JJ Buchanan. Yeah. So he was going to come in. He was going to play receiver, but he came in 215 pounds. He's up to 220, 225, something like that. Dynamic athlete, 40-inch vertical. And he's been a guy that's just impressed all fall camp, each and every week. He was a name that we heard making plays, and he's going to be featured. I shouldn't say featured, but it sounds like he's going to be, involved in that tight end spot. So yeah, I do think Beck has come in with his own system, and it's clear that it is his own system, given the comments and sort of, everybody saying how unique and challenging this offense is. But I still think he's sort of adapted to the personnel, the strengths of Utah football, and incorporated more of what Utah has built themselves upon, at certain spots. So yeah, I do think Beck's offense has changed. It's adapted. It's still going to be at the core, an option offense with Dampier, with RPO elements, all over the field, and so that's going to be what this offense is. I'm just, again, fascinated to see what it actually looks like in structure, in formations, and in personnel, because, this is kind of an interesting group when you look at the running backs and receivers and tight ends collectively. This is a really versatile group that can be utilized. A number of different guys can be utilized in different ways. And I think Beck is a guy that is really creative. And that goes back to his time, at Virginia and Syracuse, where he was sort of, talking to people from that were connected to those programs when Beck was hired. They credited Beck for getting them through some difficult times, for being creative, for being kind of the mastermind. He was there at Virginia when I think it was Brennan Armstrong, the quarterback, who totaled over 4,000 yards or something like that. Beck was the guy credited for that. And what they said was there wasn't a lot around him. And so I think Beck is really good at adapting to the personnel that he has. We always heard that with Ludwig, but it was always the same sort of system. It was always the inside zone. And yes, there were adaptations and different run plays and that sort of stuff. But to us casuals, to us non-coach football minds, it would all look the same. It looked like inside zone to us. But I think with Beck, we will see a little bit more obvious creativity and difference and variation in his play calling. So really excited to see it in action. Love to see it. I say that a lot. Love to see it. Master you. Should we be nervous? Wayshawn isn't obviously RB1, or is he? Again, according to Coach Whittingham, Wayshawn and Nakari are interchangeable, 1A, 1B. I would be shocked if Wayshawn isn't truly RB1. I think Nakari even kind of spilled the beans where he was asked about running behind the offensive line, and he said something to the effect of him running behind the second unit offense. And so, take what you will from that. But yeah, I think Wayshawn is going to be the guy. But I think it's important for Utah to have a really good 1-2 combo with Parker and Wayshawn, or with Parker and Rogers. Beck, going back to his time at New Mexico, utilized 3 running backs because those guys emerged as the playmakers. And I think Beck understands sort of the importance of running back depth and utilization of that depth. I think that is going to be, really interesting. It's a different approach than what we've seen at Utah under Whittingham, where he likes, the bell cow, the guy that commands the total number of carries. Whereas with Beck, he came, he had 3 running backs that I think had, a significant amount of carries. I know Eli Sanders had over 100. Let me pull it up here, actually, so I get it right. Yeah, so Eli Sanders, 147, and Kerry Rogers, 74, and then Javen Jacobs had 40, but he only played in 7 games. He was also a pretty dynamic pass catcher as a running back as well, and I think that's going to be sort of what we see with this group this year. I also wouldn't be surprised to see Devin Dampier's attempts himself. He had 155. He led New Mexico last year with rushing attempts. I wouldn't be surprised to see Wayshawn emerge as the leading rushing guy, and Devin Dampier become the secondary guy in terms of attempts this year. I wouldn't even be surprised to see him be 3rd in total attempts this year. I think the focus is going to be on, getting Wayshawn, getting the carry going, with the run game. So, but yeah, no, I think I do not think you should be nervous. I think you should feel optimistic and encouraged by the fact that you have, a pretty solid sounding looking 1-2 combo at running back. But good question. Next question. Shaboy Utes. How many 60-plus yard field goals do we get from Dillzilla? It's Dillzilla. That's the nickname, Dillzilla. Yeah, that's going to be interesting. I do think we'll see one. I think we'll see at least one. And I'm telling you guys, I know Witt said that he converted a 65-yarder. I know that he's also attempted 70 yards and has gotten it there. I don't know if he made it or not, but I've heard he attempted a 70-yarder. So there's a lot of juice in that leg. And, this is turning into like Bo Jackson, like the tales of Bo Jackson. The more that Dylan Curtis comes up, the more stories you hear about just how athletic he was at Murray and how all the different ways they try to use it. It's amazing. The stuff we're learning about Dylan Curtis. I'm excited to see him take the field, and I haven't said that about a kicker in a really, 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 really long time. So I think I'm excited for Curtis, man. I'm excited for Dillzilla. Let's see here. Colby. Shout out to Colby, man. I got to get down to Gladstone. I keep looking at tee times, and they're all booked, so hook a brother up, dude. Colby, you're going to be on the sideline again this year, up in the booth. Where do you enjoy following the game as a media member? Man, I'll tell you what, there's something special about being on the sideline for some of those big games. I love operating up in the press box because I do a lot up there. It allows me to keep tabs on a number of different things over the course of the game. But, I save my sideline passes for the big ones. So, yeah, I mean, USC game 2022. I was in the exact right place at the exact right time, and so I don't try to overuse that ability to be on the sideline. When I'm on the sideline, I tend to take a lot of notes, but I'm also there. I usually try to take photos. I try to be an amateur photographer. I'm not, a pro like Joel Davidson or Scotty Stevens. Shout out to those guys. But, I try to take photos when I'm on the sidelines, and man, it's a tough job. So, and all the while, I'm still trying to take notes while I'm on the sideline as well. So it's something that I save for special occasions, being on the sideline. Where do we get to? Here we go. Tyrell, do you think UCLA's defense is improved from last year? Do you think they will play well at Utah's second home? Second home? Did they play in Las Vegas? I don't know. I thought Las Vegas was our second home. I don't know. I don't know about UCLA's defense, but I know that they had a tough time last year. At UCLA, I don't think they've recruited at an elite level. They've recruited well and have brought in, this year I know they brought in a significant transfer portal haul, which they feel has helped address depth, at a number of positions on that side of the ball. They lost a couple players, in that on the defensive side. The Schwesinger kid, and then another pass rusher that I'm not even going to try to say his name, but they lost some talent. They lost some ability. And so there's going to be, spots that they're replacing on that side of the ball. What does it look like game one? I couldn't tell you. I don't know how practice is going, for UCLA, but I think this is still a unit and still a defense that I think Utah can take advantage of. It's not a group that generated a lot of pressure on the quarterback. So you like what that means for Dampier in this offensive line and the ability to potentially create some things in the passing game. But, we know that this is going to be about establishing the run. I know UCLA, they had a couple big bodies last year. I need to update myself on their roster and their depth, particularly, along the defensive line. I know they still have at least one big body. But that's going to be the challenge, is establishing the run to me. If you listen to my podcast today, I talked about the importance of, the pressure rate. I think it's going to be important for Utah to get pressure on Nico Iamaleava. And I think it's going to be, crucial for Utah to protect Dampier and to limit UCLA's pressure rate. You don't want to let this UCLA defense, which, I think they do have athletes. It's just I don't know how tough they're going to be. So, we'll see. But I still like Utah in terms of how they match up with the Bruins. I think that's a big reason why they're favored as heavily as they are on the road. And so, we'll see. But there's a lot to uncover, a lot to learn about UCLA as we get closer with game week starting up next week. I'll definitely dive into it. So yeah. Let's see here. Any other questions? Oh, my guy. Shout out to Running Hoops. If you aren't listening to Life on the Napkin podcast episodes, do yourself a favor. And once you're done listening to me, go turn those on. Because Rick was the man. Rick was an interesting cat. And, I had the fortune of going to a couple of his basketball camps, hearing Coach Rick talk about the offense and post entry passes and the importance of a good post entry pass. Andrew Crowley has done a fantastic job with those Life on a Napkin episodes. So, like I said, once you're done here, go turn on those Running Hoop episodes because Andrew does a great job. Back to Master U. Do you think with Scalley as head coach, you will get more media access? That's going to be interesting. It was interesting. I thought about this on my drive home from media availability today, just sort of the contrast between Whittingham yesterday and, Morgan Scalley and Coach Beck today, right? Coach Witt, very guarded, very watered down in terms of his responses. Sometimes with Witt, he'll give you pretty honest assessments, honest answers. But I thought, yesterday was interesting in the sense that he was pretty vanilla. Whereas with Scally and Beck today, we got some good details. We got some nuggets, about some players and individuals that we didn't get from Whittingham. And, from what I've heard about Scally and sort of how he sees the future, I do think there are things that he'll look to change and adapt to, make his mark on his program. Does that include, what does that mean for media? I don't know. I don't know how he feels about the media. But I think Morgan will certainly look to make his own path as a head coach and take his own unique path. And, I think what you've seen from a lot of coaches, and specifically, I'm looking at Kenny Dillingham down at Arizona State. He's learned to embrace and harness, the media to his favor. And I think that is what you have to do in today's game. You got to use the media. Content is king, and the more you have your name out there, I think is a good thing. Now, obviously, you want it to be good, you want it to be positive, but it doesn't always have to be positive every single update all the time. Like, we know that's not the case. It doesn't have to be rainbows and unicorns every single time you open your mouth. And I think, with Coach Dillingham, it's been really interesting to watch him from afar, listen to him from afar. His rant a couple weeks ago was a lot of fun to listen to and honest. And I think, what's interesting, he allows the media an hour of observation, which is, my goodness, just makes me incredibly jealous. I would kill for an hour of observation. So yeah, we'll see with Scally. I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful that Scally brings a different approach, but we'll see. Oh man, you can probably hear Miles pounding on the bed. I think it's time for me to wrap this up. Miles is in the bedroom behind me here. So, man, we've gone an hour. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Appreciate everybody for submitting questions and comments. Really excited for what's to come this season with the Utah Blockcast. There's going to be some fun updates over the next week or so, and really excited to get this thing going, man. So appreciate you guys. I'm going to shut it down, and you'll hear from me soon.